how do we build bridges? It starts by getting to know each other. If we don't take steps to establish these connections to build trust, we won't move the needle on improving academic collaboration. Our academic ties should mirror the regional integration and economic collaboration we already see. This interaction between university presidents from Mexico and the U.S. allows us to strengthen bonds, showcase what our universities are doing, and invite U.S. university leaders to visit Mexico.
Welcome to the AASCU Telling Our Story podcast. I am your host, Leticia Maldonado, a proud member of the Post-Secondary Value Team at the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. In this series, we share stories from state colleges and universities that have taken bold steps to successfully serve underrepresented students and their communities. As we speak with the experts who shape these programs, we will get an inside look on how they are fostering greater accessibility and affordability, closing completion gaps, and creating a more just and equitable society. Greetings to all of our listeners. I am super excited for today's episode. We are recording from Rio Mar, Puerto Rico at AASCU's annual conference for Presidents and Chancellors. And this year we have presidents and chancellors who have joined us from across the U.S. and globally, which is super exciting, but particularly important given the conference theme, which is building bridges, uplifting communities through collaboration. So, of course, it's in the spirit of this theme that today we are discussing the importance of binational collaborations between Mexico and U.S. higher education, the mutual benefits of these collaborations, particularly for students and communities on both sides of the border, and promising practices that we can learn in the U.S. from Mexican institutions in terms of access and workforce development. Joining us today are Dr. Arturo Cherbowski Lask, Director of Universia México and Executive Director of Santander Universidades, one of the world's largest private sector contributors to education, Dr. Luis Enrique Palafox, Maestre, President of Universidad Autónoma de Baja, California, the fifth largest public university in Mexico with a student population of 71,000 students in Tijuana, Ensenada, and Mexicali, Baja California, Mexico. And Dr. Marta Aguilar Trejo, President of la Universidad de Celaya, a private institution with a student population of 3,000 located in Celaya, Guanajuato, Mexico. Dr. Cherbowski, Dr. Palafox, and Dr. Aguilar Trejo, welcome to Telling Our Story. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Leticia. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
The pleasure is all mine. This topic that we're going to discuss today is one that I've been fascinated by for many years. I'm a little bit of context. I'm of Mexican descent. Both of my parents are from Mexico. But I was born and raised in California. And as an undergraduate student, this was definitely over 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to study in Mexico as an international student at the UNAM, la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México in Mexico City. And since then, I've been fascinated by this topic of collaborations and building bridges between Mexico and the United States in higher education. So I'm just thrilled to explore this topic with you today, something that I've really, like I said, been really fascinated by for many years. So my first questions are for you, Dr. Cherbowski, and they are the following. From your perspective, why was it important for a delegation of Mexican university presidents to participate in AASCU's conference for presidents and chancellors? That's my first question. And a follow-up to that is, why is it important to foster and maintain collaborations between higher education institutions in Mexico and the United States?
Thank you for the question, Leticia. I think it's an excellent question. I would say it's not just important, it's essential. If we consider the broader context we're living in one hand, the relationship between the United States and Mexico is undeniable, right? It's a historical relationship with many, many years behind it. We are neighbors, but not just neighbors. We are each other's number one trading partners. A little over a year ago, Mexico surpassed China as the top trading partner of the United States. It is also undeniable that we are living in a moment of critical regional integration, driven by the relocation of supply chains, a phenomenon we call nearshoring, to create a North American economic region. Of course, it includes Canada. However, Mexico and the U.S. are the center focus. Yet, alongside this regional integration, which may sound paradoxical, although it is not, there are evolving challenges such as political tensions, electoral cycles, and security concerns affecting our cross-border relationship. It's important to understand this context. It is within this context that something is happening, something fundamental for universities on both sides of the border. Despite Mexico being the U.S.'s top trading partner, academic collaboration does not reflect this relationship. In fact, Mexico is far from being the number one partner to the U.S. in terms of academic partnerships. For instance, according to the most recent Open Doors report from the Institute for International Education, Mexico ranks 12th in sending students to the U.S. and 14th in hosting U.S. students. The number for joint research and publications are even lower, highlighting a significant gap in academic collaboration between the two countries. And that's why having a delegation of Mexican university presidents at AASCU's annual conference for Presidents and Chancellors is so critical to building bridges, which is the theme of this year's AASCU conference. How do we build bridges? It starts by getting to know each other. If we don't take steps to establish these connections to build trust, we won't move the needle on improving academic collaboration. Our academic ties should mirror the regional integration and economic collaboration we already see. This interaction between university presidents from Mexico and the U.S. allows us to strengthen bonds, showcase what our universities are doing, and invite U.S. university leaders to visit Mexico. Above all, we must not allow politics to interfere with our mission, which transcends the current electoral junctures we are facing in both countries.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Cherbowski. Now, how do these collaborations benefit students and communities in general?
Hello, Leticia. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to the podcast. And of course, thanks to the entire AASCU team. We have truly felt at home here at the conference. There is something very important that we were just discussing at one of the discussion panels here at the conference. The need to create conditions that allow our students to study at universities in other countries, not necessarily just in the United States, and to return with those experiences and apply them in their communities. The goal is for them to graduate and become a driving force for social and economic mobility, ultimately enriching their regions. In other words, education should have a global perspective while also fostering regional development. Over the past few days, we have seen this same concern, interest, and mission for regional development among our colleagues and other universities here in the United States. In that regard, I want to mention that at our university, we have a deeply rooted philosophy of community development. For example, we focus on training medical professionals so they can integrate into community healthcare spaces within our region and our state. Likewise, we have discussed workforce development through engineering programs in strategic sectors. These topics are currently being discussed on a global scale, so I won't repeat them. However, we also emphasize the development of professionals who have a direct impact on disadvantaged communities. This is something that, if I may say so, we take great pride in at our universities. How our research and, more importantly, our professional training programs instill a strong sense of social responsibility, generating local impact through highly significant community projects. In one of the workshops, I mentioned an example, how the Institute of Engineering at our university developed an electric power plant to provide energy to an underserved community in Puertecitos, located south of Mexicali. This was a community that had been practically abandoned, lacking basic public services. Now, it has transformed into an economically significant fishing hub for that region of our state. This is just one example. I could mention many others, such as the healthcare initiatives we organize in marginalized areas of Baja California. These types of community-driven practices are replicated across many universities in Mexico. And I believe they generate immense social value through the community work carried out by our universities.
You know, Dr. Palafox, I'm really glad you're mentioning this, UABC's commitment to community projects, as you just shared, because I remember that this was something that really stood out to me when I studied in Mexico. As I mentioned, this was over 20 years ago, but actually several things caught my attention, but two in particular. And the first one, which I think is worth mentioning, especially for our US colleagues who are listening, is that higher education in Mexico, public higher education, is free. And I think this speaks volumes about the commitment to providing access to higher education. Now, the second thing is the focus on workforce development through the social service graduation requirement and how Mexican universities really cultivate a strong sense of social responsibility in their students. And as a student, I remember thinking, why don't we have this graduation requirement in the United States? If we did, I could have graduated with more work experience. And it would also mean that we would have had the infrastructure for many of us as university students to engage in community projects and use university resources to carry those projects out. Now, as a higher education administrator, I see how incredibly valuable this approach is, and I just find it fascinating how it is implemented in Mexico. With that being said, my next question is for you, Dr. Aguilar Trejo. Can you please talk a little bit more about these and other key strengths and advancements in higher education in Mexico?
Thank you very much for the question, Leti, and for this invitation. Well, our country certainly has several strengths. To mention a few, I would say that we currently have a zero rejection policy, which means that efforts are being made to expand access to higher education. I believe that both public and private institutions have made a great effort in this regard. Additionally, in the case of private institutions, which is my area of expertise, we offer large scholarships, particularly to vulnerable groups. This is a great strength of our educational system. Another important strength is the agenda set forth by the new Department of Education, which focuses on science, humanities, technology, and innovation. Its fundamental goal is to address the country's priority issues, including health, sustainability, science, the arts, the economy, and entrepreneurship, just to mention a few. I can personally attest to how this agenda is being implemented across different states. As I mentioned, I currently preside over the Association of Public and Private Universities in the state of Guanajuato. On Monday, a collaboration agreement for this network will be signed, which brings me to another key strength of our higher education system: collaboration and cooperation. I have witnessed a strong spirit of goodwill in our country, not only among institutions, but also among external allies who support education. A notable example is Santander, an institution whose mission has been to support education. In this broader educational ecosystem, I firmly believe collaboration is a major asset. I have also observed corporate partnerships between private and public institutions, which I consider another great strength. Another key aspect is the social service graduation requirement for all university students in Mexico. The state has long recognized its importance as a means of contribution. In the 1950s, for example, there were literacy initiatives, and in Guanajuato, social service by university students was officially established before becoming a federally recognized contribution from students. However, it is crucial to ensure that social service is well structured. It should not be a mere formality, but should include proper preparation and guidance for students. Universities are increasingly aware of this, and at Universidad de Celaya, we prepare our students from their first year to understand that their purpose in life is rooted in serving others. And from there is an awareness that they must always contribute to their community through their profession and through their personal actions. Finally, I want to highlight another strength: internationalization and global collaboration. Although Arturo mentioned that we still have a long way to go, many public and private universities are committed to fostering international partnerships. I can confidently say that international students who come to our country at Universidad de Celaya, we often receive students from Germany and various Asian countries, always leave with a valuable academic and cultural experience. Our universities offer high educational standards, quality programs, and a rich cultural exchange that we are proud to share. These are just some examples I wanted to mention, Leti. Thank you again for the opportunity to share these insights.
I would like to comment a bit on what you mentioned, Leticia. There is a highly significant coordinated effort underway. I will focus specifically on the work we have been doing from the northern border of Mexico, particularly in close collaboration with the states of California, Arizona, and Texas. This effort is centered on workforce development, which is a major challenge for both Mexico and the United States in the context of relocating or nearshoring. However, rather than a challenge, it represents a great opportunity for both countries to enhance the training of our engineers. I will specifically refer to the STEM fields, where we have developed important strategies and initiatives to increase the critical mass of the workforce in key sectors, such as semiconductors, electromobility, electronics, and renewable energies, all of which are fundamental to the development of both nations. Within this context, one effort I want to highlight is the training of university professors in the field of semiconductors. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Arturo, who has been a great supporter of this initiative through Santander, which, in collaboration with Mexican state governments and border universities in the U.S., such as Arizona State University, has enabled us to train the educators who will be preparing the workforce for the coming years in the nearshoring context. In the case of Baja California, we currently have around 110 professors undergoing a high-level certification process in semiconductors. This initiative will directly contribute to increasing the skilled workforce not only in Baja California, but also in California and Arizona, with whom we share a border.
And Leticia, I would add that it's very important to recognize the great examples we just heard from Dr. Aguilar and Dr. Palafox. There are many strong examples of good collaboration, best practices, and initiatives that are effectively leveraging the strengths mentioned by President Aguilar, particularly in workforce development. However, the reality is that we are still doing too little. It is incredible that despite being the United States neighbor, despite being its number one trade partner, and despite all the connections we share, our academic and university-level internationalization efforts are still so limited. The numbers clearly show how distant this relationship remains. Over the past 20 years, there have been many excuses, whether it's travel warnings, safety concerns in Mexico, or lack of funding. But let me tell you something. At the end of the day, these are just excuses. What has truly been lacking is the will and interest from university leadership on both sides of the border to start making real progress. That is exactly what we must change. Talking about these shared opportunities is useless if we don't take advantage of them. There are plenty of opportunities. We are neighbors, and we need to start ensuring that our universities recognize and treat each other as such.
Yes, absolutely agree, Dr. Cherbowski. In fact, I would also I mean, I would say that there is a lot of interest, a great deal of interest from students and professors and staff in both countries in building these bridges between institutions. And, I've had many conversations with Chicano colleagues and staff who are bilingual, who, like me, come from Mexican parents and, whose dream is to work in both countries and be part of these connections that link institutions on both sides of the border. So I firmly believe that, it's essential to foster these collaborations. And, with that being said, what do you think are the first steps that should be taken to make this happen?
If I may, I would like to highlight just a few key points. First, it is essential that institutions from the U.S. get to know us, that there is a genuine understanding of what life is like within our institutions in Mexico. That would be the first step, for our institutions to be recognized and acknowledged. On that note, I want to emphasize that our institutions welcome students from all over the world, and they are very satisfied with both the academic quality and the overall experience they receive. International students who come from Spain, Germany, Asia, and other regions are happy with the education and services provided. So the first key point I want to stress is the importance of mutual recognition between our institutions.
I would also like to add, echoing what Dr. Aguilar mentioned, that universities in Mexico, the United States, and other parts of the world often operate in isolation, focused on domestic challenges. Whether they are financial issues, political polarization, or concerns about declining enrollment, universities across the globe are grappling with these challenges, along with the growing debate about the value of higher education in the U.S., Mexico, and beyond. However, we rarely look outward. Rarely do we shift our gaze from Mexico to the U.S. or vice versa. And even more rarely do we acknowledge something I find crucial: the interdependence of our institutions. This interdependence, especially between Mexico and the United States, exists at multiple levels. As Dr. Cherbowski pointed out earlier, there is a deep cultural and economic interdependence between our two countries. That is why I believe we must take a significant step forward by formally recognizing this relationship. So far, we have done this in a very localized and discrete manner. For example, two border universities, UABC and San Diego State University, we recently signed an interdependence agreement. This agreement is not just symbolic, but rather an innovative and philosophical recognition that our institutions need each other, particularly because we exist within a mega region that we call Cali Baja, California and Baja California. However, this recognition should not stop at agreements. It must translate into concrete actions. These actions should include faculty exchanges, where Mexican professors go to the U.S. and vice versa, as Dr. Aguilar Trejo emphasized. Most importantly, U.S. students should also come to Mexico. While Mexico has been sending students, though still too few, to study at U.S. universities, it is equally important that students from the U.S. come to Mexico to experience our institutions and academic environment firsthand. This mutual exchange will strengthen the understanding and collaboration between our higher education systems.
Leticia, let me continue emphasizing this point. We have talked about many obstacles. We have spent more than 20 years trying to build these bridges, yet we still haven't completed them. And in these 20 years, the same recurring obstacles always come up: security concerns, travel warnings, and lack of funding for more active collaboration. Now, let me be clear. These are real issues, and we cannot ignore them. There are objective challenges here. However, what we have never truly had is the leadership and decision-making capacity to confront them and find alternative solutions. When a problem persists, despite the clear benefits of solving it, there comes a point when the problem, no matter how real and objective it may be, becomes an excuse, And it becomes an excuse precisely due to the lack of leadership and lack of focus from universities on both sides to actually address these issues. So what's missing? Take security concerns, for example. Yes, security is an issue. But security concerns have not stopped Mexico from being one of the top tourist destinations for people from the U.S. When it comes to spring break trips and vacations, visits to Mexico don't appear to be an issue. If you want to come party, it's not a problem. But if you want to come study, it is suddenly? This is where we begin to see that these challenges turn into excuses that prevent collaboration. And regarding funding, let's be honest, we need to start finding innovative solutions to lower the cost of these academic exchanges. Because realistically, there won't be significant public funding. There are other government priorities, and this issue is not a top priority for the U.S. State Department or Mexican government authorities. So if public funding won't be available, then we must look for entrepreneurial models, low-cost, high-quality, self-sustaining programs from the outset. And I want to emphasize once again something I've already said. It is time to truly get to know each other and recognize each other. That is why bringing a delegation here is so important, so that we can begin to establish real relationships and trust, so that once and for all we can eliminate the excuses that have prevented us from building a much stronger academic collaboration between our two countries.
Well, this seems like an excellent segue, Dr. Cherbowski, if you will allow me. I would like to ask all three of you about your experience here at this conference for university presidents, which consists of mostly U.S.-based university presidents and chancellors from AASCU. What is your biggest takeaway? Something that you will take with you from this experience?
Well, I would like to share that the biggest lesson I take away from this experience is that we have more similarities than differences. And sharing the common challenges faced both by U.S. and Mexican universities compels us to take action in addressing these challenges together. As Dr. Cherbowski mentioned, funding is one of these key challenges. By joining forces, we can increase our efforts in areas such as student and faculty mobility, establish new collaboration programs, and strengthen institutional ties. There will always be many excuses to prevent us from working together, particularly in moments like this, where it seems like a higher wall is being built. However, what I take away from this conference is that I see in university presidents, both from the U.S. and Mexico, a genuine willingness to build bridges that are higher than the walls. And that, without a doubt, is extremely positive and encouraging.
I mentioned to you previously that personally the United States has always been a reference point for both my institution and myself. I have always been very interested in understanding what the best institutions in the world are doing in order to adapt those practices to my own institution. With great enthusiasm, I have observed that the topics discussed here at the conference confirm the path that our institution and many others in our country are already following. That is one of my key takeaways, a sense of confidence, but also the recognition of the collaborative work that we can begin together. Another takeaway is that we share similar challenges. Learning about the next presidential administration gave me even more confidence, especially in hearing the perspectives of different university presidents. Listening to their concerns brought me closer to them, allowing me to better understand their perspectives and challenges. And that, in turn, is another crucial element for moving forward together. So that, as Dr. Palafox mentioned, we can build bridges instead of walls. Thank you very much.
Leticia, I would say to you that what I take away from this is a deep awareness of our similarities, especially in this very particular moment in time. It is important to recognize that it is not just the institutions of one country or the other that are facing a crisis. We both are. The crisis we refer to as the crisis of higher education is affecting institutions in both the United States and Mexico equally. On both sides of the border, our institutions are under attack, with the value of our work being questioned. On both sides of the border, we are facing the same difficulties. On both sides of the border, as has been discussed repeatedly at this conference, we need to reclaim and reshape the narrative surrounding higher education. However, achieving this requires a deep, profound reflection on what we do well and, more importantly, what we do poorly or have failed to do effectively. It is what we need to change that should be at the center of this discussion. Right now, institutions on both sides of the border have an urgent need for transformation, real, fundamental transformation. Institutions must rethink their operational models and how they fulfill their missions to ensure a more sustainable future. This critical awareness and transformation will be far easier to achieve together than to do so separately. If we try to tackle this change in isolation, we will only be repeating past mistakes, the very mistakes that have prevented us from being as true to our mission as we would like. So, this collaboration must be about working together to reinvent ourselves. A crucial part of that reinvention is precisely the transformation our institutions desperately need.
Absolutely. Well, a huge thanks to all of you for your commitment to creating, fostering, and maintaining collaborations between the two countries. With that, we conclude today's episode. And I want to once again express our deep appreciation at AASCU for your participation, not only on the podcast, of course, but most importantly for being part of AASCU's annual conference for Presidents and Chancellors and joining us here in Puerto Rico, and for the valuable contributions that all three of you have made to the conference. So thank you very much to all three of you.
Thank you very much, Leti.
Thank you for the invitation to the podcast. But most importantly, for this wonderful experience, which should not end here in Puerto Rico, but rather be taken back and implemented within our institutions. Thanks to AASCU for its leadership and for being the driving force behind all these collaborative efforts.
Oh, likewise, Leticia. Thank you so much. Thank you for the podcast. It has been a pleasure. But above all, thank you for having us here and for allowing us to be part of this AASCU Presidents meeting. A huge thank you to the AASCU leadership, to Chuck, Kathleen, Jody, you, Jose, and the entire AASCU team for the incredible work that you do. This is just the beginning of a renewed collaboration between our countries. There is still so much to accomplish. Thank you very much.
This has been the AASCU Telling Our Story podcast. As we continue this series, we will share more stories from AASCU and its members who have taken bold steps to successfully support underserved students and their communities. Please get the word out about this important work by sharing this podcast with colleagues, teachers, students, family, and friends. It's available on Spotify, Apple, and many other podcast platforms. If you are an AASCU member with a promising practice you wish to share, please visit AASCUtellingastory.org. Thank you for listening. Until next time.